I just want to say that this isn't me. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that I do usually. I'm very law abiding, law abiding. I abide the law usually.
I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
Luke once tried to get me to steal a mug from Starbucks, and I couldn't do it. I felt too guilty. I got halfway down the street and I had to go back and return it. Honestly, the barista didn't really give a shit, but you get the point. I don't do this stuff. Wait, has that recorder started already? You can't charge me over the mug thing too, can you? I wasn't ready.
I'm sorry. It's just you look like you look like the guy from Law and Order.
Should I have a lawyer?
I'm sorry. I'm just really, really, really nervous.
For the tape, my name is Gary Carmichael. Was that okay?
I'm Luke Lassay. What was our relationship? We were dating.
Our relationship was that we were in a relationship.
For like 18 months, maybe?
2 years.
I don't really keep track of that stuff. Anniversaries and all that. It's like, oh, woohoo, we've been together for a year.
The first time I met Luke was about a month after my divorce came through, and I was not in a good place. Hell, I barely left the house except for work and groceries. Then one day, Stuart from the faculty said that he was sick of watching me moping like a little bitch, and he was going to take me out. He got me drunk enough to convince me to go to a club, and that's where I saw him on the dance floor walking towards me. And okay, there's this passage where Dostoevsky describes what it is like for an epileptic right before having a seizure. And he describes an instant of deepest sensation, overflowing with unbounding joy and rapture, ecstatic devotion, and the completest life. I'd never understood what he meant until that moment.
He was drunk.
It was like waking up for the first time. Like someone had turned up the volume on the lights and the colors and the sound of the world for that second.
He was really drunk.
I'm not the kind of person who usually goes around flirting with guys, but in that moment, it was like I had to go for it or he would be lost forever. So I followed him.
I worked a few shifts. I worked a few shifts a week at this club. I had a good thing going on with the manager, and it was really good money. And anyway, I'm going on my smoke break, and this guy comes up to me. Now, when you do bar work, you get used to that kind of stuff. I'm 23, 25 when this is happening, and I'm in good shape, and guys want a piece. But Gary wasn't like other guys. He wasn't the usual type. He was wearing this blazer, and it's like 100 degrees in there, and he's wearing this stupid fucking blazer. He was a little gray at the temples, rough around the edges, had a little bit of a Mark Ruffalo thing going on. He followed me outside, and he asked me if he can bum a cigarette.
I don't smoke, but I wanted an excuse to talk to him, so I just kind of hold it in my hands and avoid putting it in my mouth so he doesn't know.
He had clearly never smoked a cigarette in his life, but it was kind of cute. He was trying so hard. Like a lot of older guys, they don't talk to me about that kind of stuff. They're not interested in me. They're just interested in this. and talking is just a means to an end. Well, a means to my end.
I panicked and just sort of started talking about my thesis. It's a take on Fangers. Sorry, it's a reimagining of Fenger's take on romanticism in the works of Dostoevsky. It was an absolute train wreck.
I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. Literally. Most of the time he was just speaking Russian at me. But he was weird. But in a really good way. Like, he was just so passionate. And like, I couldn't give a shit about Russian literature. But for those few minutes, I kind of did. And people don't talk to me about that stuff. I think it comes with being a bartender. Everybody just thinks you're a big lump of meat. But I'm not. I'm interested, and it was just really nice that he took the time on me.
It was only as I lay sobering up in bed that I realized not only had I failed to get his number, I didn't even know his name.
A week went by, and honestly, I thought about him a few times. He made quite an impression on me. And then about 2 weeks later, I was doing another shift at a club night, and there he was, walking up to the bar in a stupid fucking blazer. Oh, and it was funny. I hadn't realized how much until then that I had wanted to see him. And there he was. Small world, you know?
I went to the club every night for 2 weeks in the hope I'd see him again. I'd almost given up hope when one night I went in and there he was serving drinks. I thought maybe I'd be disappointed seeing him again, but he was just as beautiful as I remember.
We met up the next Saturday. I think we went and got sushi. I stayed over at his place, and we stayed up late just talking shit and having sex. I kind of just never left. I stayed there for like 3 days. I only went home to get clean clothes if I needed them. He wasn't like anybody else I have ever been with. And he is really good in bed. I mean, surprisingly good.
I loved him.
I loved him. And then about 6 months ago, we broke up.
He broke up with me.
And then last week, I get this message on my work email saying, you need to call me back urgently. Like, he was always pulling this shit. He would get bored marking papers, and then he would call me and not leave a voicemail. And then he'd send me a text like, call me back as soon as you can. And then I'm getting home off the night shift, and I'm looking at these text messages, all panicked. So I call him, and he would have some dumb question like, if at Club Tropicana drinks are free, how do they make any money?
I think the club is a front for a massive money laundering operation.
When he messaged me, I thought it was just another shit talk message. I mean, I knew he had lost his mom recently, and I guess I felt bad. So I called him, and he says, look, you've got to come over here and help me. And I just said to him, I'm like, Gary, I have a job, and I have school, and we're not together anymore. I just can't just drop everything for you. And then Gary starts to cry. Now, don't get me wrong. Gary is a crier. He will cry at any good meal. But he just sounded so helpless. And against my better judgment, maybe, I got in my car and I drove over to his place.
I say we broke up because broke up is like the result, you know? You don't say, I mixed some liquors together and then drank them. You say, I made margaritas. Likewise, you don't say, we had a blazing argument one night after some pretty bad weeks and then he left and never came back. So, yeah, I made margaritas. And I tried to contact him. I called him maybe 4 or 5 times a day. Sometimes I called him first thing in the morning when I realized he wasn't in bed with me. Sometimes I got drunk when I got home from my mom's and called him at 2 a.m. I told him I was sorry, that I wanted him back, that I wanted to fix things, but he never replied. After a while, he blocked my number. I guess everyone has their breaking point. His was 234 messages.
234 voicemail messages. 541 text messages. 52 Facebook messages. And a note attached to a delivery from Build-A-Bear Workshop.
I got drunk, and turns out they won't let you print a bear with a message, I love your penis.
The message said, I love your pens.
He ghosted me? One of my students said that's what they call it, ghosting. When you just up and disappear from someone's life without a trace. But ghosting makes it sound cute, like a Patrick Swayze movie, but it wasn't like that. My whole life was one big trace. We'd been together for 2 years. His friends were my friends. Luke has this weird ability to just make friends with people. Like it's nothing. We'd be out at lunch and he'd just start talking to people on the next table over. And next thing I know, we'd be swapping numbers and getting drinks, and they'd be telling us we absolutely must stay at their vacation spot on the cot. Being with him was like being led into this magical secret world that had been around me this whole time, but I just never seen it. And then when he left, it was all just shit again.
When I found him, he wasn't in a good way. His eyes were all red and blotchy, and he looked like he hadn't washed it in a while. The whole place was just a whole mess of books and papers, and the sink was full of dishes. It was just so tragic. So I washed a few mugs and I fixed him a cup of coffee.
When he came to the door, I could already tell that he was pissed. He had his hands in his pockets like one of those grumpy TV detectives. He came in and he just hung up his coat and started making tea like he'd never left. Like he hadn't just spent half a year ignoring me. We sit down at the table and he just comes right out and says, you know I'm seeing somebody. Like I'd invited him over to my shitty apartment as some kind of grand romantic gesture. I did actually know he was seeing somebody. I'd stalked his Instagram. It was this Brazilian fitness instructor named Paulo who looked like he ate kale and shat diamonds.
I told him I was seeing someone, but only because he left me 234 voicemail messages. And I know Gary. He fixates on things. And that's great for examining tiny details of Russian literature. But it's not so great for everyday life. So I knew that when I came over that he was going to read way too much into it. So I didn't want him getting his hopes up. So I said, Gary, what the hell's going on? And he just says,
Michigan has gone missing.
all this because he's lost his fucking cat.
I always wanted a cat. My family had cats when I was growing up, and when I married my ex-husband, we got Michigan so that it wasn't just by myself at the house when he was away on business. He would sit on my lap as I was translating Russian, and when Mark was away, he would sleep at the end of the bed with me. When we got divorced, he was the only thing I wanted. I was like, keep the damn house. I want the cat. When he first went missing, well, I wasn't worried at first, but then 3 days went by, and his litter tray and his water bowl were untouched. I started to panic. I looked up and down the house and nothing. I made missing posters and hung them up, waited a week, it's still nothing. And I just started to break. I just needed to talk to him. So I'm not proud of it, but one night I did some digging and found his work email on LinkedIn. I knew he couldn't have blocked me on there, so yeah, I emailed him. I knew Luke understood what Michigan meant to me.
That cat was a real piece of shit. But Gary was always saying, oh, don't worry. As soon as he gets to know you, he'll like you. Let me tell you something. The more that cat got to know me, the less it liked me. Example. One night, Gary and I are having sex. And I turn and I see the cat staring straight at us. Out of its mouth drops a pigeon. But wait, it gets better. The pigeon isn't dead. It hits the ground and it starts flapping about the room, shitting everywhere, bumping into things. And Gary and I are trying to chase this thing around. We're buck-ass naked, trying to catch this bird and put it out of its misery. And the fucking cat is just sitting there the entire time watching us like some evil fucking genius.
I told him about Michigan going missing, and he listened, and then he says,
you know, he's probably just staying at someone else's house, right? Cats are fickle fuckers, man. Like, as soon as somebody starts laying on the cans of tuna, you're out of there, you're not their cat anymore. Missing cats are like their dads that go out to get cigarettes in the animal world.
But he said he'd help, so we walked around for a bit, taping up posters and making small talk, the usual stuff. His job, his business course, his freaking perfect life, my job. I didn't tell him about getting fired because I didn't want any more pity.
It was that weird mixture of simultaneously being really comfortable and being really awkward. Kind of like wearing a pair of your favorite shoes that somebody pissed in.
He was polite. He said he was sorry for my mom's death. Well, I bit my tongue. We said goodbye, and I don't know what I expected. Did I expect him to say he was sorry? Sorry for leaving me without so much of a word just weeks after my mom was diagnosed with cancer? Sorry for spending our entire relationship cheating on me? Sorry for being such a huge fucking dick to me?
He said what? He was always using the sick mom card. She was sick for a really long time. It's not like I just left him and she all of a sudden. And besides, she was a repressive, poisonous bitch anyway. She never used to hug him when we got together for family gatherings. And she would always call me his friend because she would never say boyfriend. So I always made a point to rub myself all over him. You know, I used to always say that it's no wonder that she got bowel cancer because she was so full of shit. God rest her soul.
Sometimes I'd see guys at the gym, and I know he cheated on me with them. And I could just see them tiptoeing around me like, shit, does he even know?
Yeah, I did cheat on him. But I was honest about it. I told him on the it's not like he came home one day to find me banging the mailman on the couch. I told him on our first date that I didn't believe in monogamy. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old, and my dad just never left. He said that he owned half the house anyway, so why should he leave? So every morning, he would go downstairs and sleep on the couch, and my mom would come by with a pitcher of ice water and pour it all over him, and then he'd call her a stupid bitch, and he'd go into the kitchen and start licking all the clean plates. It's just, I think monogamy leaves people feeling trapped and unhappy, and it's like, wait, you're not married, are you? I mean, well, of course. I'm sure you and your wife are you're very happy.
When Mom got sick, we used to watch rom-coms together just as something to do, you know? We'd be sitting there as Hugh Grant stammered out his love for whoever, and I'd start crying, and then she'd start crying, and she'd fall asleep, and then she'd wake up at the credits and ask why I had put this shit on.
So yeah, I cheated on him. I never pretended. If he asked, I told him that I was seeing Steve or Aaron or whatever, and he'd scrunch up and go back to his reading. I knew that it upset him, and I know that it sounds selfish, but I spent so long dreaming of a day when I could leave that tiny, ugly house and go to the city and meet people that felt like me, to kiss and to dance and to fall in love. And it's stupid, but I felt like I had to grab onto every opportunity that I could that 12-year-old couldn't.
Luke always hated rom-coms too. The credits would always roll, and he'd say something like, I give them 2 years tops.
Gary could be kind of controlling. It's hard to explain. When I got my first job, I saved up all my money to buy this couch for my apartment. Like when I got the apartment, I had zero furniture. So I was really proud of it, you know. So when I moved in with Gary, I threw out most of my stuff. But I said, hey, we have to keep the couch. And he gets funny about it, saying that it's not going to fit in with the rest of the furniture. Anyway, I stick to my guns and we keep the couch. Awesome. But anytime anybody came around, Gary always had to make some kind of comment about it. Like, oh, come sit yourself down on Luke's couch. But like everything had to be his way, and if it wasn't, he got real funny about it. But I put up with it because I liked him, but at the same time I also kind of felt like I was losing myself a little bit.
What? I didn't really care about the couch, not really. I thought it was kind of cute that he fought for it.
When I was with him, I felt like I became the person that he wanted me to be. And I guess the cheating was just a way to keep up with myself. I didn't mean to ghost him. Okay? It's just, I feel like if I stayed and explained, then I might never leave. And I left behind my fucking couch.
I set fire to the couch about a month after he left. I thought it would be cathartic, but it took the fire crew an hour to put it out, and so yeah, yes. Sorry, I'll refocus. The day of the incident.
After we put up the papers, it was a week before I saw Gary, and honestly, I hoped maybe that was it. But then he turned up at my work in his car, and he says, "If you come with me right now, I promise I'll never bother you ever again."
I know. Looking back, it was the wrong thing to do, but at the time, it was like, fuck it, he owes me.
Honestly, I thought he was planning on killing himself. So I told my boss that I felt sick and I had to go home. And I got into his car. I remember he was wearing these like thick, chunky sunglasses and a baseball cap. He looked like a Beastie Boy, which I told him, and he laughed. And I said, "Gary, you need to tell me what's going on right now so that I can help you."
So I told him. I said, so I was thinking about what she said the other week about missing cats finding new homes, and it got me thinking. Statistically, if that is the case, Michigan is probably still on my block, just trapped in someone else's house. So I started keeping a bit of a watch on the other people on my street.
And I'm like, holy shit, Gary.
Anyway, I started keeping a bit of a watch. And I noticed something funny about Mrs. Yates's door. She's recently had a cat flap installed, and I've never seen a cat around her place. So I started keeping a log of her activity.
It was like watching the world's most organized mental breakdown. Just pages and pages of Excel spreadsheets. I don't know if premeditated is the right word, but he had clearly done his research.
I tried just putting up missing cat posters where I knew she'd find them, like on her doorstep or the hood of her car, just to make her feel guilty. But it didn't make any difference. So I got the idea in my head that if I just talked to her, I could explain things, and then she would give him back to me. But I was too scared. Mr. Luke was always better at the people stuff.
He kept saying that he just wanted to reason with her, and I kept telling him, "Jesus, Gary, this woman probably doesn't even have your cat." But he wouldn't listen. So I tried to distract him. And I said, "Gary, do you remember that time we stayed in that beautiful town on the coast of Spain? What was it called again? Shit geese?"
He tried to distract me by mispronouncing Sitja.
So I say, "Yeah, that's why I said shit geese."
Sitjas.
Man, I forgot how much obsessed you were with pronouncing your words correctly. You knew what 5 words of Spanish, but you had to pronounce it perfectly.
It's polite.
Could I have some patatas fritas, por favor?
I didn't say it like that.
How did you say it then?
Sexier. Could I have some patatas fritas, por favor?
That was the vacation that we tried to have sex in the rental car.
Oh, that was a logistical nightmare. A sexy logistical nightmare.
We had to, take out 2 of the seats?
Yeah, and remove the hood and the trunk.
Oh, remove the trunk hood. That's kind of hot.
I tell you what, sex in the rental car would make a pretty killer Beastie Boys track.
Let me know if I take this too far.
Because tonight I'm having sex in the rental car. Whoa!
Yeah. um, yeah.
Sorry, not appropriate.
We were getting along, and it was nice. And I hoped, I don't know, maybe he would just forget about the cat thing. And then it all came tumbling down. He says,
Wasn't it the holiday you had sex with that Spanish guy at the nightclub?
come on, don't bring that up now.
What? We're broken up. We don't have to tiptoe around this stuff now.
Okay, fine. It was. But only because you were being boring and didn't want to come out.
Boring? I was tired.
And I wasn't tired. I wanted to go out and experience more of the city.
Well, you sure did that. Do you know what it felt like? Waking up the next morning and finding out you weren't there? Walking around all the stupid tourist spots by myself and then coming back to the hotel and finding you passed out, knowing you'd probably been out having sex with someone else?
Well, I wanted to be out there having sex with you, but you weren't there. I told you when we first met that I didn't want a monogamous relationship, and you accepted that. You just wanted me to be whatever you wanted me to be. You wanted me to be your little house husband. I never wanted that.
Seriously? This is how it always is with you. You go around doing whatever the fuck you want with whoever the fuck you want, and you don't think about how it hurts the people around you so long as you're having fun. You need to grow up and see the consequences of your actions.
I need to grow up.
Yeah, you do.
Or maybe you need to stop dating guys half your age and expecting them to settle for your fucking middle-aged lifestyle.
If you wanted to be so free, why did you move in with me in the first place? Why would you let me hope that we could build a life together?
We stopped outside the old lady's house. And by that point, I was done. I was ready to I got out of the car and I took off. But then I heard the noise of glass smashing. And I turn around and I see that Gary had broken the window and he was forcing the door open. And I don't know what made him do it, but
I didn't plan it. I was just going to talk to her. I was, but then when she wasn't in, I thought maybe I could just go in and get Michigan and get out.
I go chasing after him. And as he walks into this house, going from room to room, shouting, Michigan, Michigan, like a fucking crazy person. And I'm like, Gary, you are not supposed to be here right now. You need to go right now.
I said, I can't leave until I find my cat.
We're walking from room to room full of 70s wallpaper and net curtains. And there's pictures all over the wall of Mrs. Yates and her husband on vacation. And the whole place smelled of old people, like, you know. And all the time, Gary is looking under the dresser, under the bed, and he's sweeping up all these little porcelain sheriff figures, trying to find this stupid cat. And I'm just sitting there saying, shit, 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 shit.
There was a litter tray and a cat food bowl in the kitchen. I knew he had to be there.
And we go into the living room, and I see this big, ancient, chunky, gigantic TV. And on top of that TV, I noticed this urn. And that's when I realized that we were in the house of a fucking widow.
There were ginger cat hairs on the couch.
There was the sound of someone at the door. I just froze. This old lady, Mrs. Yates, comes in, and she's all frail and confused, and she says, hello. And that is when Gary pulled out the gun.
I borrowed it from a friend who does World War II reenactments. I wasn't going to use it. I just
she screamed and started to cry, and I said, Gary, please put the gun down right now. And he just shouts at the old lady. He's like, go get my cat. So she goes into the kitchen, and he's trailing her with the damn gun. And I say, Gary, please stop, put the gun down. And he just says, in 6 months, I lost everything. I lost my mom. I lost my job. I lost you.
I just wanted my cat back.
We hear these sirens. One of the neighbors must have called the cops. But Gary's not moving. He stood there frozen, still holding up the goddamn gun. And the old lady comes in from the kitchen holding this cat that is flailing and scratching the shit out of her arms. And the cat that Gary and I have just staged an armed robbery to rescue and save.
It's not my fucking cat.
It's not his fucking cat.
It's not my fucking cat.
It's not his cat. Oh. So that's it.
I know you can't promise anything at this stage in the interview process, but Luke should not be tried as an accomplice. He was just trying to help me, and maybe it's time I took responsibility for myself. So, what happens now?